Welcome back to another FPL video ahead of double Gameweek 22. I'll be recapping on how I did in Gameweek 21 before looking ahead to the upcoming double, my transfer plans with 2 free transfers, talking about the triple captaincy, and much more. If you want to see a video covering the blanks and doubles in the future as well, then be sure to drop this video a like and also leave a comment in the comment section down below, and I can cover that completely and exclusively in one video on top of the reaction stream, the deadline stream, and the UCL Fantasy latest draft, which will be covered over the next month or so. Without further ado, let's get straight into this video. It's no secret that Chelsea have struggled, but despite that, Kepa's remained a good FPL option with 19 points in his last 2 games, and he was on course for a successive 10-pointer, but Alisson took that 3rd bonus point at the very end. But still, 2 bonus points, you can't complain about that. He's only 4.6 million, and Chelsea, despite not maybe keeping that many clean sheets or looking solid defensively, whenever they do keep one, Kepa has a great chance of getting bonus points because he makes plenty of saves, and he's very good in terms of the bonus points outliers. So I really like Kepa. The only other goalkeeper I would consider is Nick Pope, but he could blank in Gameweek 25. That's looking very likely. And remember, that depends on the Carabao Cup semi-finals. Newcastle are currently 1-0 up, and they're going into the second leg at home against Southampton as the favourites. And if Newcastle were to progress, then they will blank in Gameweek 25. So really, it's Kepa Arrizabalaga that looks like the best goalkeeper, and he has some very good fixtures until Gameweek 30. So I'm very happy to keep him for now and continue starting him, even in Gameweek 25, where the fixture isn't that great. My defensive line was very solid with the exception of Ben White in my starting 11 with a 0-pointer. He was subbed up at half-time, and he was also on a yellow. He was just struggling to contain Marcus Rashford, as he has done, throughout most of his career. Rashford has been a thorn in his side, but Ben White remains a good option. As discussed in the transfer tips, he is a bit of a double-edged sword. He can sometimes be subbed off early, he banks the clean sheet in, and you're all good. But on other occasions, you can be subbed off before the 60th minute mark, which will leave you very frustrated. But despite that, I will not transfer him out, even for Zinchenko or another Arsenal defender. The only defender I would move Ben White to is Luke Shaw. But then remember, United will probably blank in Gameweek 25, so then you might make the reverse switch and do a switcheroo as a result. So bear that in mind. I still think Ben White is a good option. Next up in my squad is Sven Botman. And really with Newcastle defenders, the only way to gain something over Trippier owners, since most active players have him, is to have that second Newcastle defender or Nick Pope in goal. I would not have a triple up in Newcastle right now, as they're looking very likely to blank in Gameweek 25. So as a result, I would have 2 Newcastle defenders at this moment in time, or Nick Pope, like I said. And then after Gameweek 25, after the blank is over, that's when I would bring in a 3rd Newcastle player potentially. But for the time being, I think 2 is the sweet spot. And you could argue 1 is just the one to save trouble, but I still think you want to get points before Gameweek 25. So I would go for a second defender like Botman, Burn, or Share if you have value tied up in him as well. The final defender, and he just continues to deliver points, is Trippier. He got a yellow card. That didn't stop him from getting 3 bonus points yet again. He has been absolutely fantastic this season, and it looks like he's going to break the all-time bonus points record set by Cesc Fabregas. Trippier's already very close, and I'll be very surprised if he ends up not surpassing it in the end. Even after his hauls against West Ham and Brighton, I was very sceptical about Martinelli. I think there's been a drop-off since the World Cup in terms of his performances, and he's been rather wasteful, especially in recent games. And you've got Trossard looking very lively. He had a good performance against Man City in his start, and also coming off the bench against Man United, he made a real impact. So I think Martinelli could be in real danger of losing some key minutes and maybe even losing his starting position to Trossard in the double Gameweek. So he is a big concern heading into Gameweek 23, but I'd be happy to hold him for the Everton game in 22, then reassess the situation going forwards. But he's definitely lower down the pecking order right now in terms of Arsenal assets. I would rank Odegaard and Saka as the top 2 options, closely followed by the likes of Nketiah possibly, and an Arsenal defender like Ben White, Saliba, Gabriel, or Zinchenko. Martinelli remains a good option, but I don't think he's as good or as valuable as he once was, and he's owned by almost half the game anyway. So I'd rather go for some more differential or lower owned midfielders like Saka and Odegaard. They're obviously still over 20% ownership, but regardless, I think they'll get more points, be more nailed, and get more bonus points as well. So they have the ability to get double-digit returns far more frequently than Martinelli. So have some concerns about him, but still a good choice. Next up, though, is Rashford, who has been absolutely fantastic. He did blank against Reading in the FA Cup, but he scored once again in the Carabao against Nottingham Forest, and he scored against Arsenal in the Premier League in Gameweek 21 with a fantastic goal, going past one of the best defensive midfielders in the world right now in Thomas Partey, and making him look like an amateur. Marcus Rashford is just full of confidence. He's scoring some great goals. He's very difficult to get off the ball right now. He's very good on the ball, and he's also scoring with maybe some low XG shots, so to speak, but his finishing is on another level at this moment in time, and he is one of the very best assets in Gameweek 22, probably the best on paper, and he's also a good option going forwards. I would like to trim down Man United assets, so have a triple up for double Gameweek 22, then start to trim that down to maybe 1 or 2 in Gameweek 25, and the only player I would really consider holding in the long term from the Man United ranks is Marcus Rashford. So I think he's one of the very best options in the game, and he offers exceptional value at this moment in time. There is a real debate in terms of the captaincy this week, in terms of Rashford versus Bruno Fernandes. I think they're the top 2 options in Gameweek 22. But also, when you look at the triple captaincy, do you want to use it on Marcus Rashford potentially in Gameweek 22, or Erling Haaland in Gameweek 23, who faces Aston Villa at home and Arsenal away, or save it for later in the season on an Arsenal, Man United player, maybe Rashford by then, or a Manchester City player like Erling Haaland, but later down the line, and we still have a lot of uncertainty in terms of which game weeks will specifically be doubles for certain teams. And of course, we can cover that in a separate video, like I said before, but it's still very interesting to see how we weigh all of this up, and do we go for the plunge and triple captain Rashford in this particular week. I'll be revealing my current plans later in this video in the team selection portion, but Marcus Rashford, I have to say, he is just so good right now that I'm genuinely considering him as a triple captain, and I never thought I'd say that at the beginning of this season. Next up is Kevin De Bruyne, who picked up an assist and got the clean sheet point against Wolves, but still a bit underwhelming, you could say, since the World Cup. Only 2 assists in that time period. Some really good performances where he wasn't rewarded with any attacking returns, but he's also been a bit mixed bag. In games like Man United, where he got the assist, he was also pretty lackluster. Against Arsenal, had a very ineffective game in the FA Cup, but still a great option. But I wouldn't be that adverse to selling him for Bruno Fernandes, then potentially getting Mahrez in Gameweek 23, which I'll show you in the FPL.team section portion of this video. The final midfielder, though, is Almiron, and I think my patience has run out. I still like him for the next 2 game weeks, but his overall performances, the underlying numbers, don't really point towards him carrying on what he did in the first half of this season, and I think a move to Mitoma is very simple. The problem is Brighton will probably blank as well in Gameweek 25, although they still have a possibility of a game week fixture in 25 compared to Newcastle, who will definitely blank should they reach the Carabao Cup final. So there's a few things to consider by that point, but honestly, I'm looking at getting double game week players in 22 and 23, and that's why I may have to skip a move to Mitoma, but I think Almiron is a worthwhile sell, whether now in game week 22 or maybe after the Bournemouth fixture in game week 23. When you have 3 of the highest scoring forwards in FPL, you expect points every single week. Harry Kane scored against Fulham and equalled Jimmy Greaves' all-time record as the top scorer for Tottenham Hotspur, and he's going to be a great asset in the years to come as well, should he stay at Tottenham, and it looks like he is open to the idea of signing a contract extension. I'm a bit underwhelmed with him not getting any bonus points, but you have to say, on reflection of the game, the likes of Emerson Royal and Lloris were the standouts of that match. But the next player in question, Erling Haaland, he is absolutely ridiculous. He's already surpassed the goal tallies of the Golden Boot winners of last season in Heung-min Son and Mohamed Salah. He's got 25 goals. He could easily get 40, maybe even more, and challenge Lionel Messi for that record of 50 goals in a league season. It's absolutely unbelievable what he's doing. He still had the underlying numbers since the World Cup, but his finishing was maybe a bit off it, and he was missing some key chances and sometimes just not involved in the game at all. And Man City was struggling in general, struggling to find him in those key areas and also to provide him the service that he really needs to make an impact on the game. But they did find him against Wolves on multiple occasions, and he got those goals. A true striker, a traditional one, and he's just going to continue to score goals. I mean, it's as simple as that, and that's why he's going to be a captaincy option every single week, with the exception of Game Week 22. I think this is the one week where we can go against him, go for a double Game Week player from Man United, and start to have finally someone a bit different. Unfortunately, with Marcus Rashford becoming so popular due to his incredible form, his effective ownership could be very high, rivaling Erling Haaland on certain weeks. And that's why, if you want a differential captain, Bruno Fernandes could be the one for you in double Game Week 22. The last forward, probably one of the most disappointing players this week, was Ivan Toney. Picked up a yellow card against Leeds in a 0-0 draw, and I was expecting a little bit more, but Leeds have been fairly decent, maybe not defensively, but they have, given some good sides decent matches, good competition, and they can be very competitive and get some results. And Brentford, I think, were quite happy to take that draw away from home, but Ivan Toney remains a good option in the future. My only concerns with him is that he faces Arsenal in Game Week 23 and is likely to blank in Game Week 25. I was tempted by other options, but I ended up captaining Erling Haaland in the end, and rightly so. I don't gain too much from that decision, but I also don't lose out on too many positions by captaining someone else. The gulf between Haaland and the rest of my squad was absolutely frightening this week. I got 82 points overall, and I almost have 1,300 points. And in terms of my overall rank, I went up yet again, another green arrow, to just into the top 200k. Be sure to join the league, which you can see on the bottom right hand corner of your screen, and also in the description below. Now let me show you my team selection, my two transfers, my proposed transfers, and also thinking about future game weeks using FPL.team, where I'm going to visualize game weeks 23, 24, and blank game week 25. There will be no doubts this week in terms of my goalkeeper. I'm going to go for Kepa Arrizabalaga once again. I'm not necessarily expecting a clean sheet against Fulham, but then again, I wasn't expecting one at Anfield against Liverpool, and Chelsea still managed to pull it off, and Kepa was one of the standout players in that game, and he's just so capable of getting these bonus points. And when I look at the competition in Ward, I just don't really see Leicester keeping any clean sheets anytime soon. So that's why I'm going to go for Kepa Arrizabalaga, and this will be a fairly nailed on part of my team selection. I have one doubt in my defence, but that does not include Luke Shaw, who has a double game week, 2 home fixtures against Crystal Palace and Leeds. After Man United and Leeds won their FA Cup games on Saturday, that all but confirmed their double in game week 22. That was the best news we could get as owners of Luke Shaw, Bruno Fernandes, Marcus Rashford, and all these Leeds assets as well, and the other United options like Casemiro, who's looking very enticing at the moment too. But Luke Shaw's in my squad. I have no problems with him right now. I could get rid of him ahead of game week 25, but that's another matter entirely. For the next few weeks, I'm happy to keep him. He's got some great fixtures in the long term, and that double in 22 is one of the best doubles I've seen all season on paper. Next up is Botman. I'm probably going to go for a double up in Newcastle defensively, facing West Ham at home, but I do have a bit of a dilemma because I would be leaving Ben White on my bench away to Everton, who have recently appointed Sean Dyche, and that could be a very tough game for Arsenal actually. So I'm going to favour Newcastle a little bit more for a clean sheet, and that's why I've gone for Sven Botman. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Finally, it's Kieran Trippier. He's always going to start. We know this. I'm just wondering how many bonus points he's going to get, and if he doesn't get in Game Week 22, he probably will in Game Week 23. Any proposed transfers or new signings will be highlighted in yellow, but Marcus Rashford has remained in my team for quite some while. Since the restart, he has been absolutely fantastic, and one of the reasons why I've continued to gain rank, and I was around 1.3 million in Game Week 17, and now I'm around 200k in the world, and Rashford has played a big part, of course, same with Luke Shaw. 2 great games at home. Marcus Rashford has been incredible at Old Trafford especially, and that's why putting the armband on him looks very sensible this week. But with a few alternatives like Luke Shaw and Bruno Fernandes, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion, and I'll be talking about the captaincy at the very end of this portion of the video, and Rashford is definitely in consideration for that. Next up is Bruno Fernandes, another consideration for the captaincy, and one of my proposed new signings coming in for Kevin De Bruyne. I know some of you might be very apprehensive about doing that, selling De Bruyne to Bruno Fernandes, because then you want to think about Game Week 25 as well. I'm actually not that fussed about it. As long as you can get 9 or 10 players out in Game Week 25, I think you're all good, provided you cover the kind of key assets. And my kind of plan really with Bruno Fernandes is to potentially get rid of him in Game Week 23 for Riyad Mahrez, or in Game Week 25, potentially for Riyad Mahrez again, Kevin De Bruyne, or going in another direction entirely. But for the time being, I am very happy with getting Bruno Fernandes in. I don't want to miss out on his potential haul in Game Week 22, which I think could be massive. He has a very good record in double game weeks. Next up is Odegaard, another potential transfer. Mitoma is the man of the hour, the one who scored a late win against Liverpool in the FA Cup, and who has scored or assisted in all but one game since the restart. Having said that, Odegaard has been absolutely fantastic since the World Cup as well, and he's got a double game week in 23, doesn't blank in game week 25, whereas Mitoma, there is the possibility he will blank in game week 25, and that's something else I need to think about. I want to attack the doubles, also be well set up for game week 25, but my main priority is the doubles, and Odegaard fits the bill. So as a result, I'm probably leaning more towards Odegaard than Mitoma, which might be, quite unpopular this week. Having said that though, that was my plan from last week and the weeks before. I'm not going to change that just because Mitoma is looking even more incredible right now than we originally thought. The last midfielder in my Game Week 22 team selection is Martinelli. I have some doubts about him going forwards, but I think he'll start against Everton, and I think he'll do very well in this game. That could give me more headaches in Game Week 23 and beyond, but I welcome those headaches so long as he can get those points and give me something to think about, because right now, if I were thinking about Game Week 23 and beyond, I would be open to selling Martinelli to maybe a Bukayo Saka, Riyad Mahrez being another example. There are so many midfielders to choose from, and that's why a 3-5-2 formation is going to be very popular in the weeks to come, and it's already rather popular, to be quite frank. But I'm going to give Martinelli another opportunity, but in the future I am considering selling him. I'm open to that possibility, but I have other fires to put out, and also I want to attack other areas as well to be well set up for double game week 23 on top of this upcoming double game week. Some FPL managers have so much squad depth that they're considering benching the likes of Harry Kane. I know he faces Man City at home, but I could just never bench a player of that quality, even in a single game week against one of the best teams in the country. So I'm going to be starting him, and I'm happy to not have any benching dilemmas like Harry Kane versus Matoma this week, which some of you may have as well, and we'll discuss this in the upcoming streams too. I'm happy to have Harry Kane despite that difficult fixture. Erling Haaland will be facing him off yet again, the battle of the two best strikers in the country. And I'm not expecting huge returns from either of them, but they're certainly capable. And if they both scored, I would not be surprised. And that's probably the ideal result from an FPL perspective. The final striker is Ivan Toney, who's going to become less popular over the next few weeks. I think Eddie Nketiah is going to be a very simple move, to go from Toney, Mitrovic, Nunez, and all these other strikers to Eddie Nketiah. And I think that could solve a lot of my problems going forwards, in particular blank game week 25, and I'm still considering that possibility. If I don't go for Odegaard in the midfield, I may well end up going for Toney to Nketiah in game week 23. I think that could be the play for me potentially, and I'm open to that possibility. But assuming I'm going to stick with my original plans, I'm going to go for moves in the midfield, bring in Bruno Fernandes and Odegaard, then potentially bring in the likes of Mahrez in future game weeks, which I'm going to show you just after the next section where I talk about the captaincy and the triple captaincy. The bench is quite self-explanatory. Ward is there as always. I've got Ben White first on my bench, Andreas and Cucurella. I think I'll remain with that kind of benching order, despite Cucurella keeping a clean sheet and a 6-pointer last week against Liverpool away. My only doubt is whether to start Botman or Ben White, and apart from that, I think the rest is very nailed on. The foundations are certainly there, and all that really leaves is the captaincy. And do I put the triple captaincy on someone like Rashford? At the moment, I am leaning towards that, and it's going to be a very tough battle between Rashford and Bruno Fernandes for the captaincy and triple captaincy. Right now, my gut feeling is to go for Rashford and to also put the triple captaincy armband on him. I might end up deciding to go for Haaland in Game Week 23 or saving it for later in the season, but I think this is a really good opportunity to put the triple captaincy and gain something from Rashford, because I think just putting the armband won't be enough. Putting the triple captaincy, though, will gain me quite a lot over my competitors, assuming that Rashford does deliver in these two home games, which I think he's certainly capable of. So that is my current plans for Game Week 22. Let me know down in the comment section below whether you're going to be captaining Rashford, Bruno Fernandes, or somebody else, and whether you're going to be using any chips this week like the triple captaincy, and if not, when will you be using these chips? I'm very interested to see your thoughts and your different kind of opinions and also plans going into the future. Now let me show you FPL.team and what I'm looking to do for Game Weeks 23 and also 25. The reason why I mentioned those two game weeks in particular is because Game Week 23 is going to be a double game week for Arsenal Man City. There's no changing that. And that's why I'm looking to bring in Riyad Mahrez for Bruno Fernandes in Game Week 23 with my only free transfer, should I use the two proposed transfers I showed you in Odegaard and Bruno Fernandes in Game Week 22. And I'd probably put the captaincy armband on Erling Haaland with the vice captaincy on his compatriot Odegaard. And in terms of the bench, I would put Ivan Toney, Andres Pereira and Cucurella, with Ward also being on the bench. I would have a triple up in Arsenal and two Man City players, and I think I'd be fairly well set up for Game Week 23, even if I don't have that third Man City player, which I'd still be tempted by. Maybe a John Stones could come in for a -4 hit, and he could come in, assuming of course he recovers from his injury that he sustained against Arsenal. But that's something else to think about, and once I have more information, I'll maybe decide closer to that deadline line, but this is kind of a decent provisional plan, and I'd be well set up for Gameweek 22 and 23. Then next up would be Gameweek 24, where I'd probably roll the transfer, have quite a solid foundation as well, a 3-4-3, start the front three as always, Ivan Toney, Kane and Haaland, put the captaincy armband on Erling Haaland once again, the vice captaincy on Odegaard, and bench the likes of Botman, Andreas and Cucurella, so no real surprises there as well. It'd be a good setup. And for blank Gameweek 25, I could then bring in a Man City defender like John Stones if I don't do it already, and then if I want a full 11, I would get rid of Ivan Toney potentially, but then which forward do I go to? I can't go to Nketiah because I have a triple up in Arsenal already. I can't maybe go to Mitrovic because I don't really want him beyond Gameweek 25, to be honest, and I just got rid of Mitrovic, and I'd actually be quite willing to go for a 10-man squad in Gameweek 25, and if anything, maybe get rid of Cucurella, who is my biggest weak link. I've been wanting to get rid of him for quite some time, but I've had other moves planned, you know, trying to target these double game weeks, that he's just stayed in my squad for far too long. He has certainly overstayed his welcome, but these are some solid plans for Game Week 22, 23, and all the way up to Game Week 25. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Like I said, if you want to see a double/blank game week guide for not only all those game weeks I just mentioned, but also Game Week 28 and 32, then let me know down in the comment section below. And thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's try to get this video to the 300 likes. Let's keep on pushing towards 18,000 subscribers. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and also check the links in the description below for the Patreon, patreon.com/DylanRCM. If you sign up for as little as £3 per month, you get access to all my team reveals and also early access to videos, and you'll get the perks that the captains and legend tiers get, which include those two perks that I just mentioned. You can also check the links for the channel memberships, the Discord server, and the FPL League, and keep an eye out for UCL Fantasy content, which will be out very soon. The Champions League is fast approaching, so not long left for that competition to return. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 22. Continue to enjoy the football and take care. I'll see you very soon.